think of shamanism, the word soul retrieval kind of comes right behind it. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about soul retrieval, about that process, and about, you know, how the soul, what would cause the soul to leave the body, and how might it manifest in the body, and how you retrieve it.
Soul retrieval, in the broadest possible terms, you're talking about a sense of self that goes deeper than the ego. I mean, a lot deeper than the ego. A sense of, that includes a person's energy, their ancestral energy, all that makes up that person on an energetic level. That energy, that quantity of self that I'm going to call the soul, because that's how we refer to it, can be damaged, can be traumatized. If you get hit by a car, it can be traumatized. If you feel emotionally betrayed by your parents, it can be traumatized. Anything that's going to hurt you physically, energetically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, any kind of impact that's strong enough will tend to shake part of that self, part of that soul loose. And that's what we're talking about by soul loss, okay? And what's interesting is that in working with the hundreds of clients that I've done soul retrieval with and power retrieval with, what I have found is that there are a number of different techniques that work. If it's just sort of loose floating, you know, I had a bad relationship and I felt kind of listless and empty since then that kind of stuff is fairly easy to just sort of pull in, like you've got it on a fishing line, and draw it in shamanic state, and then let that be reabsorbed, because our soul recognizes itself. All right, so when we're in proximity to that self, unless something else has gotten in there and filled up that place, then automatically that stuff, that part of ourself, will magnetize to the rest of ourself and come back in, just like a vacuum. All right. If that doesn't happen, then it tells us probably something else has gotten in there, and then we do an extraction, which is another really traditional shamanic technique. So we'll get out whatever has taken the place of that, and then that tends to come right back in. So the other way that we go about this is that if the trauma was particularly associated with one place, one location, for instance, you know, you're going through a intersection and you get T-barred by another car, okay? Well, that's a very specific location. And so we can journey back to that time and place. And what I've found, it's fascinating, you have the person just stand there in their shamanic body and say, I'm here, come on back. And it's like a little shower of bits and pieces start drifting toward them of their essence, their soul that has got scattered out by that trauma. And that comes back. One of the fascinating things about working with so many people with soul retrieval is the recovery. And what I mean by that is the days and weeks after a successful soul retrieval. You can see them become more and more substantial. And what often happens is once they start to get a critical mass, it's almost as if they begin on their own drawing more and more of that soul back to them. What I find all too often is that when a person goes beyond a certain critical mass, when they lose enough of their soul, then they start to lose cohesion and they just drift. It's like they've lost their skin. And so finding a way to begin rebuilding that, it's almost as if they begin to get their own gravitational mass going, and they start to automatically bring more back into the whole. So it's fascinating.